You can send us the questions. And then I'll tell people to email me questions while we're on too. So maybe that'll work as well. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to our BWISE career chat. This evening, we are speaking to the lovely Sharon Rossmark. She is COO of Aero Innovations. Did I say that right, Sharon?
AeroVista Innovations.
AeroVista Innovations. And she's out of Chicago, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about women in drones and hopefully answer some questions that the community has about how to start or transition into a career working in drones. So hopefully we'll have a lot of interesting dialogue and lots of questions. I guess we'll kick it off. Sharon, tell us a little bit about you and your background and how you made the transition from what I think is a very interesting career in another field over to drones.
Yes, thank you. And good evening, everyone. My career and background, the majority of it, about 30 years of it, was spent in insurance and financial services, something totally different than what I'm doing now. And that took me to 2008. And then I spent the subsequent 7-8 years running my own consulting firm, Zeos Global Ventures. And then this opportunity came along 2 years ago this month, as a matter of fact. And so it's been an interesting journey. I'm sure that there may be some interest into how do I even land this position or even navigate to this role. And it came about, as I always say, if you're doing the things that you love, you'll find other opportunities within that. So one of the things I like to do is I like to sit on boards of organizations. That's a way of giving back. And so one of the organizations is Illinois State University, which is my undergrad degree. And I sit on the College of Business Advisory Board. And during our fall meeting 2 years ago, they actually had a group of students come in to talk to the business leaders on the advisory council about an entrepreneurial project that the students were working on. And in this particular case, they were actually working on software for drones. And that was my first exposure to them, but to the whole concept of drones. But the reality was they were actually pitching to us software that they had developed for the agricultural community, which is a huge need and a huge market even today. However, they sense that when they're talking to a group of business people, that the real sizzle is to show them the real meat of the matter, which is the drone itself. So one of the kids had his father come in with a drone, and a small drone, and fly it around the classroom, and you could just see the light bulbs go off in everybody's mind of what's possible with the drones once we physically saw the drone flying around. Up until then, they had been talking about the software capability. So that interaction with the kids, the father approached me afterwards and said him and a buddy were looking at starting a drone business, and really just wanted to pick my brain for some ideas because of the type of questions I was asking and how engaged I was in the dialogue exchange with the students. And so from there, we met several times over the next couple of months, and we exchanged ideas and talked about what was possible. We did some research on the industry. And when it came time for them to launch, they actually asked me to come aboard. And so literally doing something that I like led to this opportunity.
That's incredible. And, it's so important for us to share our stories. There are so many women who are in careers where they could really thrive if they just had a little bit more information. So I think that's why it's so important that we have leaders like yourself engage with members. We've got, everyone from early career to senior ladies in BWISE. Most of our ladies do fall in between mid-career and senior level. But even there's opportunity. As you mentioned, you've got a whole nother career that, came about after you had spent, quite a few years working in something totally different, which, it seems like there may be a little correlation with the insurance and maybe having to verify property for damage or insurance claims or things like that. So it seems like there may be a little ability to transition because they may be kind of adjacent or interrelated industries. Is that true? So are there needs for drones in the insurance industry?
So to answer your question, the The short answer is yes, but the broader response is that drones are basically changing our world. And so the applications vary across numerous industries, and insurance is just one of the many industries where drones can not only help facilitate, reduce costs, but then also saving lives, and so or even bodily injury to employees. So one example is, to your point of insurance, when there's been a homeowner's damage or severe property damage, generally a claims adjuster may have to go up on the roof or have to navigate through some wooded area to get to a consumer's home or insured's home. Well, if you have a drone, you can actually send the drone up and program it to do the inspection. So that's just one small example. Other industries, though, in addition to insurance and agriculture, that are utilizing drones quite frequently and is also seeing incredible results are construction sites and infrastructure inspections like bridges and so forth. One growing piece that we are, as a company, we've gotten into is for public safety and first responders. So if you think about firefighters and law enforcement, using them for public safety and first responder operations, and then also aerial mapping. And then the one area, the final area I'll offer you that is seeing an explosion is also in the movie field. The movie houses are really utilizing drones because it's so much easier and less expensive than using a helicopter, as an example.
That's incredible. Now you're a member of an organization called Women in Drones. And I think the reason that we connected is that you have a real interest and passion in getting more women into the field. Can you tell us a little bit about that organization and what your role is?
Yes. So Women in Drones is an initiative that we started as a division within AeroVista Innovations. And it came about as my business experience as a woman in a career, as a woman in corporate America, really understanding the need for women to have a voice. And so as I've gotten involved with this industry, the good news is the industry is very collaborative at this point in time. And I says we shouldn't wait 5 or 6 years before things start evolving and changing before we give a voice to the women. And so we started the initiative really as a opportunity to give greater visibility to women in the industry. And so the website womenanddrones.com actually features women from around the globe and their various roles within the industry, which not only as drone pilots, but many of them have traditional careers, whether it's accounting or HR and so forth. But the bottom line is it's about giving greater visibility and having someone capture the data and information about women in the industry. So we really consider ourselves the authoritative voice for women in the industry.
It's so interesting with this, being a burgeoning industry, that you would see women already at the forefront. And we had a prior show with a gentleman, Melvin Flowers, that is an attorney at Accenture, and he kind of gave us an overview of some of the different applications, and I think he called them cases that use cases, thank you, that the drones would be applicable. And so it's really interesting to see all the various areas that drones, could be used. I think most people, when they think of drones, they think of Amazon dropping packages at your door. But there are really so many different applications that those of us who are already in very technical fields could certainly make a transition. I'm not saying it's easy, because obviously anything, that you're doing that's going to possibly impact public safety, you're going to have some kind of certification. So can you tell us a little bit about, that part of the industry? Are you having to work with the FAA to get certification? And can you speak to that a little bit?
Oh, certainly. So August of 2016, so just a few short months ago, the FAA established new guidelines and actually has now implemented a program that's called Part 107 certification, which requires for commercial purposes to become licensed, or actually they call it certified to fly drones commercially. That now allows us to operate as a commercial operator in various venues such as training, as well as performing services for various industries.
So, oh, I kind of missed that. I was looking at our other guests trying to come in. So there is certification, and that's through the federal government, correct?
There is certification for commercial operators. That is correct, and that is done by the FAA. So you have to take a license test, and the test is quite similar to manned aircraft license written test that they have to take, because it's important to understand that when you're flying a drone, you're actually flying in the national airspace.
Right.
And that requirement, you have to understand how to navigate the national airspace, because it's not just drones that's obviously in the air.
Right. So for a recreational use, you don't have to do that because you're not allowed to fly at the same altitudes as the commercial use. Is that right?
Almost right. You're not required to have a license. You're still required to follow the guidelines. And so it's important for recreational users to understand that, for example, you can't fly within 5 miles of an airport or operation. And so many times you may say, well, I don't live near O'Hare, so I may not be near an operation. Well, that's not really true. You may live near a hospital that has a heliport. You may live near a private airport. And so it's important to understand where your location is. And so the FAA has established and put out information to educate consumers around the importance of understanding, even though you're not flying commercially, you just can't buy a drone from at a store, take it home, open it up, and put it up in the air. You really need to understand the risk involved, as well as understand the importance of where you are in relation to other navigation of airports.
So that's good information to know, because as we were talking prior to really starting the show, we were saying that, you know, some retail, big box retail outlets sell drones. They're probably on the lower cost end. Probably don't have a lot of range, if I had to guess, compared to some of the more commercial drones. But would you recommend someone who's interested? I know there are a lot of programs for children, and they're flying these teeny tiny little drones. So would you recommend someone get involved in a club? Would you recommend someone just get a drone, of course, follow the guidelines, and just start learning how they work if they're interested in transitioning into this field?
I would recommend that they definitely take a class, even if it's an online class. There are online classes that you can take to at least understand the guidelines. And certainly the FAA website offers information that helps any user, commercial and recreational, the basics of what they need. I certainly would not recommend that you just buy one, bring it home, and open the box and put it up in the air. The ones that, even though they may be small and may be inexpensive, they still are flying in the national airspace. And so it's important to understand how to control the drone and what the operational components are for the drone. And so I would recommend that they definitely take a class. You know, AeroVista Innovations, of course, we offer classes, but there's numerous other classes, and it's more important to be educated and understand what you're doing than it is just to say I'm flying a drone.
I think that's key. You know, as engineers, and certainly those of us who work in operations, sometimes you don't have the luxury of taking classes, right? Because the planet is down, and the manufacturing line is down now. So, you know, I'm glad you said that, because that's probably what I would have done. I would have gone right on over there and bought my drone. I would have been flying it around without the class. So now I'm going to take the class, and I encourage those of you who are interested to seek out classes. Certainly in the future, we will be working with Sharon and her organization to coordinate some events in the Chicagoland area. And then for people who are interested, you know, at the various BWISE chapters around the country, we'll work to see if we can put something together online for those of you who are interested. I think it's an incredible industry to transition to. And those of us who are already, you know, analytical because of our backgrounds and our experience, I think, you know, that's a wonderful way to make an impact. You can certainly see your work, and as Sharon said, in public safety and other applications of drones. So I think this is a wonderful time to get into it. Sharon, hopefully you can talk about that a little bit. And then what's the size of the industry, if you have any facts and figures on that? I see, you know, $5 billion or $17 billion. Do you have any statistics on the size or the potential size of the industry? And how many women of color, if you have that information?
Okay, so let me talk about several aspects of what you just brought up. First of all, this is a great time to get into the industry, and the reason why is that, as I mentioned earlier, the industry is very collaborative right now. I've gone to several conferences in the last few months, spoken at several conferences, and I can't tell you how open people are to exchanging ideas and really helping one another out. And the online venues are very helpful. And it's not much different than the tech industry just maybe 10 years ago in terms of its evolution. Do I expect it to change? Absolutely. In terms of the size is that this is one of the fastest growing industries in the world right now. The whole drone, the whole autonomous industry is. And I think that's why it's another reason it's fascinating to get into, particularly for your audience who are mostly engineers, or at least in the engineering field, because there's so many opportunities across the entire scope of the autonomous field. From a size standpoint, let me put it this way. There are roughly 600,000 licensed manned pilots in the country, okay? And we're seeing increasing numbers of unmanned pilots that was going to far exceed that. Numbers-wise, no one has stats yet on how many women there are, and particularly how many minority women there are. And that's one of the things that the initiative Women in Drones, we hope to get our arms around, is some facts and figures about women in the industry, and then even break it down further from that. But I can tell you that if you're interested to get into the industry, regardless of your background, I would encourage people to do so and seek out those areas that they love within engineering, because they certainly are there. And there's no place to go but up right now, literally. I know, kind of tongue in cheek there, but literally this industry is taking off. From a stats standpoint, the FAA has I'll pull them up in a minute. FAA has been issuing licenses since August of last year, and they are the passing rate is about 90%, I think 88 to 90%. So they're seeing great interest on the commercial side because of the opportunities.
That's great. That's great. There's so many different, I guess, functions within the industry. Obviously, there are the software designers, then there are the pilots, there are manning them. What other careers and opportunities for entrepreneurship? So that's one, obviously, of BWISE's, core tenets is, for those of us who want to continue up the ladder of corporate America, but also for those of us who would like to be entrepreneurs. And I think, there are a lot of Black women-owned businesses that are doing well, but they have no employees. So, we're encouraging women, to have endeavors that employ other people. So what are some of the typical either jobs or businesses that people can have in the drone industry?
So as I mentioned earlier, some of the burgeoning industry businesses are those in infrastructure inspection. So certainly someone that's an engineer, public safety personnel, construction companies, because we're seeing a huge need and a huge use there for 3D modeling and mapping of construction sites, recreation of buildings as they take them down and pull them back up. Just being able to capture that with the drone can be done over a period of time, much more inexpensively than it can with any other means, such as a helicopter or some other type of aircraft. And so I would encourage people to really pursue whatever their specialty is, find that specialty within the autonomous, in this case, unmanned aircraft arena.
And see how that dovetails with that industry. So whatever you're passionate about, see what function that fits into the drone industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. From the women that you have encountered, are a lot of them entrepreneurs?
Surprisingly, they're mixed. I would say that a large percentage of them are entrepreneurs have been in the background of photography or videography and are transitioning, expanding their business. I just did an interview today with a woman from Australia who's a remote scientist who tracks remote animals out in the wild in the outback. and they utilize drones. So it's interesting when you see the diversity of the backgrounds of the individuals of how they're using it. Several of them are in remote areas, such as up in Alaska. Again, similar to what the women I found in Australia doing, and that they're using them for assignments on rigs or special jobs that, again, as scientists or as engineers, that you wouldn't just think of in any given day.
Right. I know here in Houston, you mentioned rigs, but, certainly the offshore drilling in the Gulf, that has become certainly a more profitable or opportunity for those people who are getting into drones, because there's certainly so many applications with inspection and other things to ensure that the continued safety of this equipment. And I think there is one particular woman here in Houston that does have a very technical background that's in that industry, working with oil and gas. So it just seems like it's just got applications for everything you can think of. From, she mentioned, construction and public safety, and then oil and gas. I'm sure there's some manufacturing applications that it would be beneficial to as well.
Absolutely. And another one, again, is the agriculture. Is if you can imagine the amount of land that a farmer has or that is out there available for farming, utilizing the drone and the software capability on drones now is just unbelievable.
Well, that's great. I think, as, BWISE continues to look for opportunities to share information, we're looking for opportunities where we can come in where the industry is growing, and they're looking for people who have the skill sets or the interest, as you mentioned. It seems
Right.
like, it is more receptive to people who are coming from other things and maybe some of the other industries. Your background is in engineering, but you seem to be thriving and doing very well. So I think that's very encouraging. I've got members who've been in science and engineering for 10, 15, 20 years. And they're interested in moving on and doing something different, but you spend all this time and this money getting this degree, so you don't want to throw it away. So I think industries like drones are great, because it still gives you the ability to have your toe in something reasonably high tech and interesting, but you don't have to be calculating things at your desk all day. So I
Right.
am definitely very interested in some of the things that you shared with us, and looking forward to the ability to see one in person. Your training, tell us a little bit about your training and what you all do at AeroVista Innovations.
Yes. So our training is comprised of providing training for not only the consumer, but then, as I mentioned earlier, for fire, police. We also offer group training. So if someone wants to get together with friends, we have started expanding the training to include STEM classes for schools. We've done grade schools, high schools, and community colleges. And one of the things that we're seeing is that, to your point about job opportunities within the community colleges across the country, many of them are into job retraining, and so they're starting to integrate drones into the curriculum for air conditioning, heatings, and other services. At the STEM level within the classroom, we've done classes for a broadcasting class. Drones are really starting to grow within journalism. I just met a woman a couple of weeks ago. Actually, she was an African-American woman here in Chicago that is a drone pilot for CBS. And she's the only female and African-American pilot in the country for CBS.
Wow.
So we're starting to see the applications within schools grow and the interest grow immensely.
Well, that's very encouraging. And it just seems, like I said before, and you shared, there's so many areas to come into the industry. There's so many things, the need, is so great because it is so new and burgeoning that, there's almost no place where someone can't find a fit, it sounds
Yeah.
like.
In fact, I was just working on a presentation for an upcoming presentation, and I was thinking about how to help the audience really understand how far we've come with this industry. And so for your members that are familiar with the Jetsons,
Right.
Jetson,
Right.
at the most recent CES show, they actually are now showing drones that can carry people. And so
Wow.
while we're still all amazed at just the capability of drones, because we can go to a store and buy one, and we see Amazon talk about package delivery, there's already work underway for using drones to move people around. So that whole autonomous industry, again, is just really growing. The other thing that's growing is fascinating, and I saw my first one at a recent conference last month out in Los Angeles, is drone racing. That is really taken off, and we're starting to see an increase in drone racing interest by kids. And so there's money being poured into it from a spectator standpoint and from an investor standpoint that is really big. And so you wouldn't think that, but it's equal to car racing, automobile racing when you think about NASCAR. But this is just flying it around usually indoors, but I guess in places where the weather permits, it can be outdoors, and then moving at great speeds. But it's fascinating to watch.
That definitely sounds interesting. And I know that's a way to get kids interested. Part of the challenge is, kids have short attention spans. So, you have to have something that's, part education, part fun for them to even consider it. And I think drones would be great.
Yes.
I see programs here in Houston, certainly, where, kids as young as 6 and 7, are flying the tiny little drones around. So I think that's incredible. And I think certainly in our communities, it's going to be imperative, for us to educate them for this next generation of jobs that are coming. So those people who have very little computer skills are not going to come along with us, I guess, in the digital revolution. So we've got to make sure the kids are learning these skills. I know there's a lot of effort and push to get them trained in coding. And I think coding is just going to be another language. It's English and Spanish and French and coding that is going to be critical for these jobs in the coming years. So I'm very excited to hear that kids are getting involved in drones, especially kids from underrepresented groups.
Yes, in fact, one of the programs that we're working with the YWCA here in Chicago on, they have what they call a Tech Girls program. And so they've asked us to partner with them to develop some exposure opportunities for the girls that are in these programs around drones. And so and they already have a session on how to build them, but then actually give them a chance to fly them. And talk to them about the career opportunities to inspire them. And I can't tell you how important that is to your point about giving kids the opportunity. I just did an interview recently with Drone 360 magazine, and they asked me, they says, you've had a background.
You still there?
Uh-oh.
Did we lose you?
Can you see me? Okay, because it's dead on my end. Okay, I'll just keep talking. But anyway, they were asking me about my varied background and experiences, and so what drew me to the industry. And after reflecting on it, I thought back to a time when I was a kid. My dad used to pile us in the car, and we'd go out to the airport down in St. Louis, and we sit out at the end of the runway. Back in those days, you could get very close to it, but it was across the fence, on the other side of the fence, and we watched airplanes take off. And it was fascinating because he would, require us to understand what type of aircraft it was, and of course, we had to know the brand of the aircraft. And then we would leave there and we would go over to the park, St. Louis Park, and actually fly a remote control plane that he had. Then they were tethered. They weren't like they were now, but they were tethered. And I had totally forgotten about that experience until the interviewer asked me that question about what drew me to it. And I said, it was something that I always did love, and my career education took me in a different direction. So in many ways, this is an opportunity to come back to that. And so I welcome the opportunity for us to expose kids. And that's why at AeroVista Innovations, we're doing just that. We're starting to offer STEM programs to help engage kids further in understanding drones and the whole autonomous capability.
Well, that's wonderful that you came full circle, right?
Yeah, exactly.
early days, watching those airplanes take off to this. And who knew that this was going to be, an industry that I will say, unless you correct me, maybe welcoming, to a more diverse population than, maybe some of the other ones that, are really struggling with diversity. So, speaking of that, what challenges have you had? It sounds like it's been a wonderful journey so far, but I know nothing is without problems ever. What challenges would you say you've had or you've heard other people have in getting into the industry?
So I would say that the toughest part has really been the fact that everybody's learning together, but that tough part also makes it fun. I've been in industry 2 years, and that's considered an old timer in this industry right now. At one of the conferences I attended back in September, which was one of the major drone conferences, the head of the FAA spoke at the conference, and he says, if you've been in this industry 2 or 3 years, you're definitely an old timer at this.
Oh,
And
wow.
so in some ways it's frustrating because the rules and the guidelines have not evolved as fast as we have entered the industry. Excuse me. However, we're seeing, excuse me, we're seeing, sorry, we're seeing so many people get into the industry. Lost my voice.
You okay?
Yes, just a little tickle. We're seeing so many people come into the industry that the embracing has just been unbelievable. I'm sorry.
That's what happens. I tell you, anytime you do a show, I've gotten a cough. So no
Yeah.
worries. No worries.
It's coming back.
It's coming back. Okay.
It's coming back. So as I was saying, that while it's still new and there's challenges, most of the challenges are people we're learning together. And so the frustration has been that we want to move faster, and some of the rules and guidelines just have not been in place.
Right. Right. So it sounds like, anyone who's interested, now is the time, with the first of the year, people could, reach your organization and find out some more about when your upcoming trainings will be, and, see if there are some local, I guess, meetups or other organizations that, are actually flying them in their location. So, how would one get started? What would you say? Attend one of your training sessions or online? Is that what you would recommend first? I think we covered this a little bit for those who are joining us a little later.
So certainly AeroVista Innovations, oh my God, .com certainly can offer classes. They can reach out to me. Once I get my voice back, I'm happy to provide any direction and coaching. And along the way, it's just important for people to really understand what's their interest. I really believe that once you land on what you're interested in, there's opportunities within most industries, but right now this industry is growing. There's a need for people with the experiences and background and education that your members offer and bring to the table. And the industry is very welcoming. So now is a great time to jump in.
Okay, ladies, you've heard it from the expert herself. Now is the time for people who are looking for their next move. I've got quite a few members who, sometimes in your career, you get to a point where you say, okay, I've done this and that's fine. It was a means to an end, but for the rest of my career, I really want to do something fulfilling where I can make an impact. And it sounds like certainly drones, some of the other things we're going to be talking about later on in the year would be that industry. So I implore people who are looking for something else, don't settle. I make a point of telling people, if you work at a factory making buttons, you're probably not going to have an impact, that you may want, in your career. So don't settle. If there's something that you have an interest in, I tell people all the time that if you spent 20 years as an engineer and you decide that you want to go bake cupcakes, that is okay. That is okay. You can venture into something else and don't feel like your engineering career has been a waste, because it's all been learning. It's all been preparation for other things. Those of you who know my story know that I worked for 20 plus years as an engineer, and on the side did some social events. I just had, some dinners and, planned them, and never imagined that I would have a whole nother career where I'm not calculating anything, I'm not climbing up on anything, and I'm doing the things that I love, and that's reaching out to people and engaging them and sharing my information with them. So those of you who are interested, you're on the fence, you're wondering what your next move is here in the new year, 2017, I say venture over to drones and see if there is an area that is of interest to you, and certainly where your background meets your interest is certainly a great opportunity. And in the how can I say this? You can be financially successful, right, Sharon? Is that correct?
I would say that's absolutely correct. So whether you want to start off as an entrepreneur or whether you want to actually go and work for another company, there's certainly opportunities across the board. The industry is evolving quickly, and so the sooner you jump in, the better. Another thing that just came to mind that your members might want to consider is sign up and go to a drone conference. They're all over the country. This is the beginning of the year, so they'll start rolling them out here throughout the year. And certainly, if your members want to reach out to me, I'm happy to provide them information about which the various conferences, as well as for them some training.
And I'll make sure that I get that information from Sharon and post it, so that those of you who are tuning in or watching the replay can have that information. I think that's, the biggest thing is having, the information and the contact. And that's why we do the career blabs or chat, so that people who are interested have a starting point. And okay, well, I'm not sure with all this information on the internet where to go first, but now you've got a resource with Sharon, and certainly the information that we're going to share to get you started. So I know a lot of people like me or would want to know, what's the most lucrative position outside of an entrepreneur, which that depends on how well your business is doing. But what's a typical, or do you all talk about that in the industry? What's a typical salary? So here in Houston, oil and gas salaries are probably higher than some places in the country. So somebody with 20 years experience is certainly making six figures. Is that, something that would someone have to start at the beginning? Are they going to have to be, of course, I know they're starting over, but are you going from six figures to very few figures when you're starting in this industry? Or can you come in as, an expert in something? I don't even know what the typical jobs are. So of course you said pilot. So I know a pilot, and then I know there's software designers, but can you transition? Because I know that's a question my ladies are going to ask. I make $175,000 a year, and I don't want to start all over and eat cat food. So
yeah, no, and that's a great question. And I really think, again, it depends on your area of expertise. So for example, if you're into a data scientist, oh my God, my voice goes. As a data scientist, that's really critical in this field, being able to navigate the crunching of the data. I'm so sorry, my voice is going. However, if you're a drone operator and you can fly a drone, you can literally move from project to project.
Okay.
And so it really depends on your capability and your interests. As I mentioned to you about what we do at AeroVista for training, we can train consumers and we can train fire and police. And so that gives us an ongoing atmosphere of trainers, of a delivery system that we wouldn't have if we were just doing construction photography or construction mapping.
Right.
As an engineer, there's any number of ways that your background can be used for various projects. So whether you're the on-site pilot or whether you're the on-site data specialist, they have to work collaboratively in order to really deliver the project for the client.
I'm glad you said that, because we've been talking about flying the drones, but there's another part of drone industry, and that's the data that it collects.
That's correct.
And I've got several members who are interested in data science. And can you talk a little bit about what it collects? Because I know there's all type of drones. There's ones that could fly at night and they, can see, I forget what they call that, but they fly at night. But what kind of data are they collecting? I know if they're taking pictures, that's obviously visual, but are they calculating or gathering other things, wind speed? What data are they collecting?
Yeah, and so it's interesting you asked that question because it really depends on the application. So all of the above in your example is what's capable. What we're seeing is that, as I mentioned to you earlier, the women, the women that I met in Australia that are remote scientists that are using it for tracking of animals and wildlife. That's a wholly different type of data versus if you're doing 3D modeling of a site, of a construction site, and trying to capture that, or as you mentioned, the oil fields. So it's really across the board. There's no specific area that I would say is one better than the other, or one makes more money than the other. It's really what their interest is in.
Okay.
I know, as I mentioned, the woman, again, that's a commercial pilot that flies for CBS. That requires intense skill. That's not just a matter of let's plan this shot. When she's out on a news run, they have one shot to get that drone up to capture that particular scene.
Right.
And that requires a whole different set of skills and psychology to navigate that.
Right. So is she going to replace the helicopter that's usually hovers over a news story or works with the police department to track, someone they're following? Are drones going to displace those current technologies, you think?
I wouldn't say displace totally, but certainly displace a large percentage. And here's the reason why. To have the drone in the trunk of the car or in the back of the van while you're out there on site, you can put it up in a matter of minutes. If they've got to dispatch a helicopter, just think about the manpower, the cost, the gas, and so forth, and to get it to that site. The limitations with the drone are not much different than the limitations of the helicopter if the weather could be impacting the flight. And so to answer your question, yes, we're starting to see more of that because you can be a lot more responsive and a quicker response and at a less expensive cost than you can if you have just a helicopter and you have to have crew on standby and you have to be able to get them up in the air quickly and get them over to your location. Whereas if you're out on the truck anyway, on the TV crew truck, you've got the drone, you can just simply launch the drone and capture it at the specific time.
Right. So I'm guessing that she doesn't have the same drone that I'm going to go buy at the big box retailer. She's got one of the ones I saw on the Microsoft website that was, I think it was $19,000. I think it was $19,000. So I was like, okay, I know I don't want that one.
Yeah. Well, that's a misnomer, is because it's like with any technology, the capabilities are advancing and the costs are coming down. So if you think about the big back TV screens to the ones now, you can buy a 54-inch and literally bring it home in your car because it's so lightweight. Well, there's the same thing with the drones. In fact, I was just looking at a study just last week that right now the average professional drone cost is about $2,000, and that can be purchased online anywhere from Amazon to some of the big box retailers. It just depends on the distribution point. At the same time, that machine has a lot more capability than one that you would buy maybe for $79.95 or $100 at the same big box retailer, because they have two different capabilities. DJI, which is one of the largest manufacturers and one of the leading manufacturers, actually has built in capability that many of the fire and police departments that we work with are utilizing that particular product line in their search and rescue and in their scene investigation efforts. We got a call just 2 weeks ago here locally where an elderly person with dementia had gone missing from a home. And it was starting to become late in the afternoon, and they put people out, but they thought they were concerned that the person may have wandered off into the forest preserve.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a call to bring the drone out. And so a couple of our guys went out. The good news is, as it turned out, the person had wandered off into someone's home, but we had sent the drone up into the forest looking for the individual.
Mm-hmm.
But if you had to get a helicopter, the expense to the community for the expense of that, as well as the dispatch one, because it's not like we have one on site here in this community.
Right. And then the drones, they have, of course, a myriad of features, but they have some that are, is it heat identifying? So, you know, even in a forest of trees, you can see, you know, the trees are not glowing red. That must be an animal or a human. Is that true? They have all kind of features like that helicopters probably don't have, or?
Yeah, so it's not the drone itself. It's really what's called the payload. So it's what the drone is carrying. In this case, it would be a thermal camera.
Okay.
And so whether it's a handheld camera or a thermal camera that you can attach to a drone, that's where the capability is. Now, therein lies some of the costs when you talk about the higher end. The camera for a thermal camera of that type can run anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000, whereas the drone itself may be about a $2,000 drone.
Got it.
But to your point, the payload capability by having a thermal camera will allow them to go into a forest preserve and find individuals because it can pick up the difference in the heat wave.
Okay. Awesome. I'm glad you said that because, you know, we've been talking about drones like they're a monolithic thing, right? Like it has, you know, all this capability, but you're telling me a drone is what flies and then you attach a payload to accomplish other things. So a camera, so just the drone itself doesn't have a camera. You have to have a camera added as the payload to a drone. Is that right?
Well, some cameras come with built-in cameras. I mean, some drones come with built-in cameras, and they're not switchable. And that may be some of your lower-end cameras, lower-end drones in terms of the pricing, but they do have cameras on them. The higher end, or the ones that you're talking about, have interchangeable payloads. I'll give you another example. When we started working with one of the fire departments, they gave us an example of how they would use it. It's a community here along the lake. And he mentioned that it's not unlikely that a runner along the way, a jogger along the lake, or someone that lives at a home along the lake may call in and say, "We think we see someone in the water." Well, the fire department has no option but to launch all capabilities to go out there to check out and see what it is, which means they've got to get divers, they've got to get boats, and they've got to go out there and see. Well, if there is someone, by the time they get there and they do all of that, the situation would have gone from bad to worse, perhaps.
Right.
With the drone, it allows them to not only save on resources, because while they still may have to bring all those to the site, they can at least launch the drone up, see if in fact, if it is a person, which they told us, by the way, overwhelmingly, it may be debris. They said it's not unusual for 70 to 80% of the time that it's debris, but they don't know until you get out there. But
that must be.
Yeah, think about that. And that's tax dollars at work. So if they could launch the drone, they could send the drone out and have it assess what the situation is. And if it's a person, they can have a life jacket attached and drop a life jacket. They can drop a bottle of water if that was a situation where they needed to get water to somebody. So it really depends on what the need is. The drone has a capability of having that payload. Therein lies the whole concept of package delivery. That's considered a payload because it has the capability of carrying something.
So is Amazon kind of the dominant player in that? Are there other companies that you work with or you're seeing in the industry that are going to be doing that? I mean, everyone knows Amazon delivers things, but I've seen grocery stores are starting to get into the delivery model, and certainly any store that sells things, would be, a candidate to do this. Are you starting to see other retail interest from your customers or your clients?
Well, we're getting a lot of inquiries, but to your point, Amazon started the whole marketing effort around it. And they kind of push the limits on the industry as well as on the FAA, because a lot of this is going to be driven by how do you navigate the skies to make all of this happen. So
Right.
between the recreational flyer, the commercial flyer, and now you've got the retailer and or package delivery. And so Amazon was probably at the forefront of the idea and the concept. But UPS is already working on ideas. You hear about the pizza companies. I think one of the sandwich companies out east was working on an idea of sandwich delivery or taco delivery or Subway delivery of some sort. And so I think some of it's marketing, but I think also it's not too far off in the future. It's not the George Jetson 20 years from now, 50 years from now. It's probably just a matter of a couple of years from now.
That's very interesting. And while I think that's great that I could get my pizza, within, 20 minutes, what's to stop someone from taking my pizza who sees that drone?
Or shooting it out of the sky. And those are all of the issues around, even though the capability is there, what is it that we need to deliver? But you got to remember, we now live in the gig economy. And so just a few years ago, if you'd say that people were going to be using their car to shuffle individuals around, you would say that's crazy, but Uber has proven differently.
That's
and
right.
so all of those issues that need to be navigated and need to be figured out, it'll happen. It's already in the works.
That's right. This is a disruptive technology, and once that genie is out the bottle, it's not going to go back. So that's one of the reasons I'm encouraging, certainly BWISE members, let's get in on this while we can, right? Certainly, as you mentioned, tech has gone from, probably a one of exclusivity where only the people who are knowledgeable about it were in it. And now it's just exploded. That's my clock. Don't mind that.
It's okay. So one of the things, as I started the conversation off, is that drones are changing the world. And you asked me about entrepreneurs. It called to mind a woman that I met at a recent conference that is using drones to deliver water in Africa. And so her nonprofit organization that's based here in the States, actually in upstate New York, they're actually utilizing drones to help deliver water in remote locations in Africa. And I just found it fascinating when she was just talking about the whole process of how they go about doing it. So that's the whole thing of why drones matter, and how they are changing our world. Well, if you think about that, whether they're launching satellites now to have cellular capability in some of these remote places, well, something as simple as a drone with a payload that can carry a bottle of water to people out in remote areas that don't have access to water, just brings an opportunity for entrepreneurs to come in and change that whole scenario.
I love it. I love it. I certainly have, a good number of members who are either, African or African descent and have family back in Africa. And I can imagine that there would be a lot of interest to go back and help, and especially if you're in, some of the other areas like biomedical engineering and, how do you get healthcare and some drugs or other things that may be needed in remote places like that. So I'm hoping that there's going to be an incredible interest from my members trying to see how their own careers fit with this burgeoning technology. But I do have a question. I want to make sure we get our questions answered. So this comes from our lovely Angela Watley in DC, who is our BWISE director. Thank you, Angela. And she wants to know of any training program for kids. And she says she's got a 10-year-old cousin who's into drones and would like to learn how to fly. So it sounds like you partner with organizations, but do you have a program that you run for children, or is that something that you partner with an organization that's working with kids to do?
So we generally partner with organizations to put on the training. So whether it's a local school or whether it's a program, a nonprofit like a YWCA, as I mentioned earlier, the Tech Girls programs, because that's generally where you find an organized program where you can come in rather than us trying to find the kids and bring them in. But one of the things that we've been approached about is offering a summer camp, but for kids, maybe a week long as part of a 3 or 4 week long camp program for kids during the summer. And we would come in and maybe do a week. But again, we're generally being brought in by organizations. So we certainly can partner with any organization across the country and provide training for kids.
And I know you travel quite a bit. Do you know of any organizations in the DC area that are looking to partner with you on that? Or is most of your work in the Chicagoland area?
So far to date, the majority of our work has been in the Chicagoland area, but as we grow and as this industry grows, we're always looking for partnerships in other parts of the country, and we've done things in other parts of the country. So I'd be open to talking with someone if they want to reach out to me about opportunities there in the DC area.
Okay, you heard it here, Angela. So
Yeah,
we'll
give me a call, Angela. We can talk.
We'll get you connected. We want to spread this, and certainly our children who are interested in interesting industries and careers where they can make an impact. And the days of not, I won't say go to college, because you certainly can learn some of the coding and other things without going to a four-year college, but of relying on kind of middle skills, as they call them. 20, 30, 40 years ago, you could get a job in a factory and raise a family and have, a very good quality of life. But more and more factories are automating tasks, and, those jobs are going away. I've seen in the last month or so, 2 robots that were building. One was building a house, and one was laying bricks for a street. And I thought, these were jobs that were traditionally, manual labor. You paid someone, a fee to put this down. And, usually they, may have been from other parts of the world, and they may be undocumented. And, so, there was, an industry where, you could make some money, although not a lot of money, doing some manual labor. And I think, as we move more towards, AI and other technologies, those opportunities are going to go away. And
Yes.
so you won't be able to, drop out of school or, not finish school and still be able to make a good living. You're going to have, some level of technical skills, whether you go to a coding camp, which, I believe college is not for everyone. It certainly, does some wonderful things both to your professional and personal development. But there are some people that just do not have the attention span to, to go to a 4-year program. And so some of the coding academies that are popping up around the country and that's another question I just thought of my own, are teaching skills to people who have, different backgrounds. And it's intense, from what I hear, in order to move into software development and coding and things like that. So I think that's great for people who know, I just don't have, the desire to go to a 4-year college. So that's another question I wanted to ask. As part of what you do you have career placement? So if people go through your training, do you offer that, or do you have connections? So if somebody said, I'm going to do the training and it's X number of weeks, do you have any ability, or do you have a program where you can help them transition to a job?
So the short answer is no, we don't have job placement capabilities, but we certainly do help people build on their skill. And so just to give you a little bit of information about the classes, we do a day of ground school. This is for adults that are going through for either commercial or for fire, police, the public safety training. We do a day of ground school. So we teach them the mechanics and everything that they need to understand about the national airspace, about impact on weather, how drones operate, and so forth. And that's a full solid 8-9 hour day in the classroom, understanding the mechanics of drones and what they need to understand about flight. And then we spend the second day in the air actually flying the drone. And so we try and have a ratio of 5 students to 1 instructor, no more than 6, so that they can have that one-on-one time and that hands-on time, because you do learn a lot by just watching a fellow pilot as they navigate the skies for the first time. You learn a lot by just observing, and then we rotate the drone amongst them. So that is our foundational course. And at the completion of that course, they at least have a solid understanding of the national airspace, as well as the mechanics of flight, and then also the navigation of flight by having the hands-on experience.
And you said that's a two-day course?
That's a 2-day course that we offer, and we tailor it for both commercial and for for public safety. And then for individuals, we offer a variety of courses based on their needs, as well as group training.
Okay, and you can do some customized group training based on needs of the
Yes.
group.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I don't see any more questions. Leslie, do you have any questions before we wrap up? I tell people who come on this, you know, this is the shortest hour you'll ever experience. It's a lot of fun. You know, people learn a lot, I think, and I love doing it. So I hope you guests enjoy it. But Leslie, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions, and there's no other questions from our audience members. Angela said that she'll definitely be following up.
Okay, great.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Well, I always try to end on time, so I see we are right at 8 o'clock. So if there aren't any more questions, I just want to thank Sharon so much for reaching out to me. So the way that we met, for those of you who haven't heard this, Leslie and I were hosting or launching our Chicago, our BWISE Chicago, and we were featuring our lovely young lady who turns out to be Sharon's goddaughter, right?
That's correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Erica, sister scientist, has her own manufacturing facility there in Chicago, and we hosted a manufacturing day. And who should saddle up to me and introduce herself but, you know, the lovely Sharon Rossmark. And she says, hey, I'm interested in getting some women into drones. And I was like, how did you know that I was trying to find someone to do that? So it's just very serendipitous. I think that's the word that we connected. So Sharon, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for contacting me. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. You know, I think it's important. How else would this demographic get this information, right? And, you know, we make it easy. You can, you know, watch us from, you know, the comfort of your home and your pajamas. You can watch it several times. I'll have all the necessary links and contact after the show, but I think it's just so important that we continue sharing this information and bringing experts like yourself on. So I thank you for taking an hour out of, I know it was probably a very busy day today, and sharing all this information. I wouldn't be surprised if you have an increase in interest, certainly from our viewers, but we share this on YouTube, so we don't lock it. Anyone who's searching for drones, you know, can watch our video and connect with you. So I'd be really curious. Let me know if you hear someone connect with you or reach out to you and said, I saw you on YouTube.
Absolutely. Well, we look forward to it. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And AeroVistaInnovations.com. Let us hear from you. We're happy to help.
That's right. Please reach out to Sharon directly. I'll have this information as well. And then www.womenandrones.com. Correct, Sharon?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, everyone, it's 8:02. I want to thank everyone who joined us tonight. As always, we always have such a good time learning incredible things. Thank you for my wonderful co-host, Leslie McKinney, and Sharon, of course, and all of you who are watching. So we'll see you next time, and you guys have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night.